The bridge of the Veltharian flagship, Celestial Harmony, hummed with the quiet efficiency that had defined their empire for 4 centuries. Commander Thexval adjusted his crystalline viewing apparatus, watching the endless streams of merchant vessels flowing peacefully between star systems. The trade routes sparkled like jeweled necklaces across the dark void, each ship carrying prosperity to worlds that had forgotten the meaning of conflict. For 400 years, the Veltharian Empire had maintained order through superior technology and diplomatic wisdom. Their ships were marvels of engineering, smooth flowing curves that caught starlight like captured dreams, energy shields that could deflect solar flares, beam weapons that could slice through asteroids with surgical precision. Most importantly, they possessed the wisdom to use these gifts responsibly. The younger officers on the bridge moved with practiced calm, monitoring communication channels that carried nothing more threatening than shipping manifests and cultural exchanges. Lieutenant Zethmore tended the sensor array, occasionally noting the arrival of another primitive species seeking audience with the Empire. These encounters always followed the same pattern: awe, submission, and eventual integration into their peaceful civilization. Thexval had witnessed dozens of such first contacts. The primitive species would arrive in their crude vessels, usually powered by chemical rockets or basic fusion drives. After seeing Veltharian technology, they would inevitably surrender their weapons and beg for guidance. It was the natural order of things. That morning began like any other, until Zethmore's sensor readings changed. The young officer's bioluminescent skin patches flickered with confusion as he studied the data streaming across his console. "Commander, we have an emergent signature near the Sol system," Zethmore reported, his voice carrying the musical tones of his species. "The vessel appears to be as unusual." Thexval glided to the sensor station, his elongated limbs moving with the fluid grace that marked his kind as natural diplomats. The readings made him pause. This ship hadn't emerged from their known hyperspace routes. Instead, it had torn through spacetime using some method their sensors couldn't identify. "Display the vessel," Thexval commanded. The main viewer shimmered, revealing a craft that defied Veltharian aesthetic sensibilities. Where their ships flowed like liquid metal, this vessel looked like it had been carved from a single block of industrial steel. Angular surfaces jutted at harsh angles. Gun ports dotted its hull like predatory eyes. Weapon systems that seemed designed purely for destruction rather than defensive purposes. "By the eternal light," whispered Zethmore, "what manner of species build such machines?" Captain Kim Tae-ho stood on the bridge of the Storm's Edge, watching his crew work with practiced efficiency. The ship's interior reflected humanity's practical approach to space travel: function over form, reliability over beauty. Banks of monitors displayed tactical information, while his officers coordinated the complex dance of interstellar navigation. "Communications. Establish standard. First contact protocols," Tae-ho ordered, settling into his command chair. The worn leather creaked slightly, a sound that reminded him of Earth's oceans and the naval traditions that had shaped humanity's approach to space exploration. Lieutenant Park So-min activated the communication array, cycling through universal, mathematical sequences and basic pictographic languages. Her fingers moved across holographic controls as she broadcast humanity's peaceful intentions across multiple frequencies. The response came faster than expected, but not in the way they had hoped. "Unknown vessel. This is Commander Thexval of the Veltharian Imperial Fleet. You have entered protected space without authorization. Power down your weapon systems and prepare for inspection. Submit to our authority, and you will be treated according to civilized protocols." Tae-ho exchanged glances with his executive officer, Commander Lee Hyun-woo. Both men had served in Earth's Solar Defense Force long enough to recognize the tone of assumed superiority. "Polite, aren't they?" Lee muttered, his hand unconsciously moving toward the weapons console. "Let's try diplomacy first," Tae-ho replied, though something in the alien commander's voice set his combat instincts on edge. "Open a channel." The main screen flickered, revealing the Veltharian bridge. The aliens were tall, graceful beings with translucent skin that seemed to glow with inner light. Their movements were fluid, almost hypnotic, and their technology appeared far advanced beyond anything in Earth's databases. This is Captain Kim Tae-ho of the Earth vessel Storm's Edge. We come in peace, seeking dialogue between our species. We mean no harm to your empire or your people. Thexval studied the strange beings on his viewer. They appeared primitive, crude clothing, basic technology visible in their ship's interior. Yet something about their bearing suggested they were not the typical supplicants his empire usually encountered. Your peaceful intentions are noted, Captain Kim. However, your vessel's design suggests otherwise. Those weapon systems are clearly intended for aggressive action. In the interest of galactic stability, you will surrender your ship for proper evaluation. Tae-ho felt his jaw tighten. Around him, his bridge crew tensed. These aliens spoke of peace while making demands backed by obvious threats. I'm afraid that's not possible, Commander. We're on a peaceful exploration mission, but we won't surrender our vessel to unknown parties. Perhaps we could arrange a neutral meeting to discuss. Your cooperation is not a request, Thexval interrupted, his musical voice carrying an edge of impatience. Lesser species have always benefited from Veltharian guidance. Observe, the alien commander gave a subtle gesture to one of his officers. On the Storm's Edge, alarms began screaming as sensors detected a massive energy buildup from the Veltharian ship. Captain, they're charging some kind of directed energy weapon, Park So-min reported, her voice tight with controlled fear. Target appears to be the small moon in this system. A beam of pure energy lanced out from the alien vessel, striking the rocky satellite. The moon didn't simply explode. It ceased to exist, converted to expanding plasma in milliseconds. Subtixay. Demonstration of power was unmistakable. Tae-ho stared at the empty space where a celestial body had existed moments before. Around him, his crew waited for orders, their faces reflecting the same grim realization that was crystallizing in his mind. Diplomacy wasn't just failing, it had never been an option. These aliens saw humanity as another primitive species, to be conquered or controlled. They had just demonstrated they possessed the power to erase worlds, but they had made one crucial mistake. They assumed Earth's children would react with fear and submission, just like every other species they had encountered. Instead, Captain Kim Tae-ho smiled coldly and turned to his weapons officer. So-min, bring all systems online. Let's show these aliens what humans do when someone threatens us. Commander Thexval watched his main display with confident satisfaction as the energy beam dissipated into space, leaving nothing but glowing particles where a moon had existed moments before. The demonstration always worked. Every primitive species he had encountered would see such power and immediately surrender their crude weapons. Maintain targeting solutions on the Earth vessel, he instructed his weapons officer. They will likely attempt to flee now. Standard procedure is to disable their engines and bring them aboard for proper evaluation. The bridge crew of the Eternal Wisdom moved with practiced efficiency, their bioluminescent skin patches pulsing in calm, measured rhythms. This encounter would be recorded as another successful integration of a lesser species into their peaceful empire. Perhaps these humans would prove useful as laborers, or maybe even junior members of their diplomatic corps. Lieutenant Zethmore monitored the communication channels, waiting for the expected surrender transmission. Instead, his sensor readings began displaying something that made his skin patches flicker with confusion. Commander, the human vessel is not retreating. They appear to be powering up their weapon systems. Thexval turned sharply, his elongated form moving with sudden tension. Impossible. Did they not witness our demonstration? Perhaps their primitive sensors failed to register the moon's destruction. On the bridge of the Storm's Edge, Captain Tae-ho stood perfectly still, his dark eyes fixed on the tactical display. Around him, his crew worked with the deadly precision that had made Earth's Solar Defense Force the most feared military organization in human space. Weapon status, he called out, his voice carrying the calm authority of a man who had spent years preparing for exactly this moment. Lieutenant Park So-min's fingers danced across her console as targeting computers locked onto the alien vessel. All kinetic batteries online, Captain. Fusion warheads armed and ready. Railgun charging to full capacity. Commander Lee Hyun-woo studied the enemy ship's profile on his tactical screen. Their vessel appears to have some kind of energy shielding. Configuration suggests they're designed to deflect beam weapons and plasma attacks. Tae-ho nodded grimly. Lucky for us, we don't fight with pretty light shows. So-min, give me a firing solution on their primary systems. Target their power cores and propulsion arrays. The weapons officer worked quickly, her training taking over, as combat protocols engaged. Solutions locked, Captain. Recommend Alpha Strike Pattern, mix of kinetic penetrators and fusion payloads to overwhelm their defensive systems. Do they honestly believe those primitive projectile weapons can penetrate? How shields? Thexval asked, genuine puzzlement coloring his musical voice. Their technology appears to rely on crude kinetic force rather than refined energy manipulation. His shield technician, a younger Veltharian named Yexthon, monitored the approaching threat vectors. Commander, their projectiles are traveling at extraordinary velocities. However, our energy barriers should easily deflect such crude attacks. What happened next would be talked about in whispered conversations across Veltharian space for generations to come. The first railgun round struck the Eternal Wisdom at nearly 20% the speed of light. The solid tungsten penetrator, guided by advanced targeting AI, punched through the energy shield as if it didn't exist. The shield had been designed to deflect and absorb energy. It had no defense against a chunk of metal traveling at relativistic speeds. The round tore through 3 decks before exploding deep inside the ship's core systems. Emergency alarms began screaming as atmosphere vented through the massive hole punched in the hull. What was that? Thexval demanded, his skin patches now pulsing with rapid, panicked flashes. Before anyone could answer, the second wave hit. Fusion warheads, each one guided by its own AI targeting system, slammed into the alien cruiser's weapon ports and engine compartments. The Eternal Wisdom had never been designed to withstand such brutal direct attacks. Its elegant curves and flowing lines offered no protection against humanity's philosophy of overwhelming firepower. Explosions rippled along the ship's hull as internal systems overloaded. The beautiful crystalline viewing ports that had served as symbols of Veltharian technological achievement shattered under the stress of multiple impacts. Yexthon stared at his console in disbelief. Shields are failing. Hull breaches on 7 decks. Main power core is showing critical fluctuations. The third wave of human weapons proved even more devastating. Cluster munitions separated into dozens of smaller warheads, each one seeking a different target. Point defense systems that had never been tested in real combat failed to track the incoming threats. Engineering sections exploded as fusion reactors went critical. The ship's graceful propulsion arrays, designed more for elegance than durability, twisted and melted under direct nuclear strikes. For the first time in 4 centuries, Veltharian blood was spilled in combat. Lieutenant Zethmore clutched his station as the bridge shook under repeated impacts. Commander, we're losing life support on multiple decks. They're not trying to disable us, they're trying to destroy us completely. Thexval felt something his species had almost forgotten, genuine terror. This wasn't the civilized warfare of energy beams and shield competition that their military academies taught. This was raw, brutal destruction aimed at killing everyone aboard his ship. Return fire, he commanded, his voice cracking with panic. All weapons, target their vessel. The Eternal Wisdom managed to launch a final beam attack. It's weakened. Energy projectors sending a lance of concentrated plasma toward the human ship. Captain Tae-ho watched calmly as his ship's defensive systems engaged, deflecting the attack with ease. Their weapons are losing power, Captain, Park So-min reported. Shall I continue the attack? Tae-ho studied the crippled alien vessel on his display. Parts of it were still exploding as internal systems failed. Debris and atmosphere continued, venting into space. The elegant warship that had threatened to destroy his vessel moments ago now tumbled helplessly, its crew fighting just to survive. Cease fire, he ordered. Open a channel to the alien commander. Thexval's image appeared on the main screen, but he was barely recognizable. His perfect, flowing robes were torn and stained. His bioluminescent patches flickered erratically, with shock and pain. Behind him, smoke and sparks filled what remained of his once pristine bridge. "This is Captain Kim Tae-ho," the human said, his voice carrying none of the panic or fear that Thexval expected. "Your ship is crippled and your crew is dying. I'm prepared to offer humanitarian assistance, but only if you agree to an immediate ceasefire." For long moments, Thexval could only stare at the human captain. This primitive being had just demonstrated a level of military capability that challenged everything the Veltharian Empire believed about galactic hierarchy. I accept your terms," Thexval whispered, the words feeling like poison in his throat. As rescue shuttles launched from the storm's edge to assist the crippled alien vessel, emergency transmissions were already racing across Veltharian communication networks. The news spread with the speed of hyperspace communications. A single human vessel had destroyed one of their most advanced cruisers in less than 10 minutes. The Veltharian Empire was about to learn that humanity had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of war, while they had spent centuries forgetting how to fight. The galaxy's long peace was about to end, and Earth's children were ready to teach everyone what real warfare looked like. The war room deep beneath Seoul Defense. Command buzzed with controlled urgency as Admiral Lee Min-ho studied the holographic displays floating before him. Three-dimensional star maps showed Veltharian fleet movements across 7 sectors, their formations as predictable as they were beautiful. Each alien battle group moved in perfect geometric patterns, maintaining aesthetic spacing that would have impressed art critics but horrified military tacticians. "They're treating this like a parade," muttered Colonel Kim Da-eun, her scarred face reflecting years of combat experience. "Look at those formations. Perfect lines, equal spacing, maximum visual impact. They have no idea what's coming." Admiral Lee nodded grimly as he reviewed the intelligence reports streaming in from reconnaissance drones. The Veltharian response to the Storm's Edge incident had been swift but completely predictable. They were mobilizing their ceremonial fleets, beautiful vessels that hadn't seen real combat in 4 centuries. "Deploy the 7th Fleet under Captain Choi Yu-jin to the Kepler sector," Lee commanded, his fingers manipulating the holographic interface to show projected battle zones. "Commander Park Jae-sung will take the 13th Battle Group through the Vega approach. I want them to hit hard and fast before the aliens can adapt." The orders went out across humanity's military network. Within minutes, unlike the Veltharians' elegant but slow communication systems, human command networks operated with the brutal efficiency of a species that had learned warfare through millennia of conflict. Captain Choi Yu-jin stood on the bridge of the Dreadnought, Iron Thunder, watching her battle group emerge from hyperspace in perfect attack formation. Her ships were nothing like the flowing artwork that comprised Veltharian vessels. Human warships looked exactly like what they were, machines built for killing. The Iron Thunder itself was a monument to humanity's practical approach to warfare. Its angular hull bristled with weapon emplacements, sensor arrays, and defensive systems. Every surface served a function. Every component was designed for reliability under combat stress. Where Veltharian ships curved like sculptures, human vessels cut through space like predatory sharks. "Contact," reported Lieutenant O.C. Young from the sensor station. "Veltharian 4th Fleet, bearing 27 Mark IV, 15 vessels in. Ceremonial formation." Choi studied the alien formation through her tactical display. The Veltharian ships approached in a perfect diamond pattern, their hulls gleaming like jewels against the starfield. They were beautiful, graceful, and completely unsuited for the violence they were about to experience. "They're hailing us, Captain," reported Communications Officer Han Min-soo. "Standard diplomatic protocols. They want to discuss terms of our surrender." "Put them through," Choi ordered, settling back in her command chair with predatory satisfaction. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the bridge of the Veltharian flagship. Commander Yethval appeared in his ceremonial robes, surrounded by the crystal and flowing metal architecture that marked his species' aesthetic preferences. "Human vessels. This is Commander Yethval of the 4th Imperial Fleet. Your recent actions constitute acts of unprovoked aggression against the Veltharian Empire. Cease your advance and prepare to be escorted to a neutral system for proper judicial proceedings." Captain Choi smiled coldly. "Commander, This is Captain Choi Yu-jin of the Earth Defense Force. You have 30 seconds to power down your weapons and surrender unconditionally. This is your only warning. The alien commander's bioluminescent patches flickered with what might have been amusement. Captain, you appear to be outnumbered 3-1. Our vessels possess energy shields and beam weapons far superior to your primitive kinetic systems. I advise you to reconsider your position. 20 seconds, Choi replied calmly. What happened next would be studied in military academies across human space for generations. The Veltharian fleet maintained their perfect formation, confident in their technological superiority. They had learned nothing from the Eternal Wisdom incident, dismissing it as a lucky strike against an unprepared vessel. Time's up, Choi announced. All ships execute Thunder Protocol. Show them what humans do to pretty formations. The human battle group dissolved their neat formation and scattered like a pack of wolves. Each ship followed its own attack vector, moving with the chaotic precision that marked humanity's approach to warfare. The Veltharians tried to track multiple targets simultaneously, their elegant formation becoming a liability as human vessels attacked from every angle. The Iron Thunder opened fire first, its main railgun sending a tungsten penetrator through the lead Veltharian cruiser at 25% light speed. The projectile punched through the alien ship's energy shields as if they were soap bubbles, tearing through 3 decks before exploding in the reactor core. Missile swarms launched from human destroyers, each warhead guided by artificial intelligence that could outthink any organic pilot. The Veltharians watched in horror as hundreds of fusion warheads curved around their defensive fire, seeking the weakest points in their formations. By the eternal light, gasped Yethval as his flagship shuddered under multiple impacts. How are they penetrating our shields? His science officer, a trembling young Veltharian named Kexthor, stared at his readings in disbelief. Commander, their weapons aren't using energy at all. These are physical projectiles moving at incredible velocities. Our shields were never designed to stop solid matter. The elegant Veltharian formation disintegrated under the human assault. Beautiful ships that had served as symbols of their empire's peaceful nature exploded in brilliant fireballs. Their beam weapons, designed for ceremonial displays and precision strikes, proved useless against human vessels that moved like living things. Commander Park Jae-sung's battle group struck the second Veltharian fleet near the Arcturus system with even more devastating results. His ships used a tactic that the aliens couldn't comprehend. They fought as individuals rather than formations, each captain making independent decisions based on battlefield conditions. The human destroyer, Crimson Fury, dove through the center of the alien formation, its point defense systems shredding 3 Veltharian escorts before they could react. Meanwhile, the cruiser, Steel Resolve, used the distraction to position itself behind the enemy flagship, launching a spread of fusion torpedoes that turned the beautiful vessel into expanding plasma. Within 6 hours, the Second Fleet ceased to exist as a fighting force. The Third Fleet met its end in the Centauri system, where Captain Lim Soo-jin demonstrated humanity's most terrifying tactical innovation, the use of their own damaged ships as weapons. When the human frigate Defiant Hope took critical damage, its captain didn't retreat. Instead, he aimed his dying ship at the largest Veltharian vessel and detonated his reactor core at point-blank range. The explosion vaporized both ships, but the psychological impact on the surviving Veltharians was devastating. These humans were willing to die to ensure their enemies died with them. News of the defeat spread across Veltharian space faster than their military could suppress it. 3 entire fleets destroyed in less than 3 weeks. Thousands of their people dead. Hundreds of their most advanced vessels reduced to floating debris. But what truly terrified the Veltharian leadership wasn't the human weapons or their ship designs. It was their complete disregard for the rules of civilized warfare that had governed galactic conflicts for millennia. Humans didn't fight in formations. They didn't announce their attacks. They didn't give enemies time to surrender gracefully. They attacked without warning, struck with overwhelming force, and continued fighting until their opponents were completely destroyed. In the comfortable halls of the Veltharian High Council, emergency sessions were called as reports flooded in from the surviving commanders. The humans weren't just winning battles, they were rewriting the fundamental assumptions about how wars were supposed to be fought. Admiral Lee Min-ho reviewed the battle reports with grim satisfaction. The Veltharians were learning what every human military academy taught in its first lesson. Warfare isn't about honor or beauty or maintaining elegant formations. War is about winning, whatever the cost, and humanity had been perfecting the art of winning for thousands of years while the galaxy slept in peaceful ignorance. The communications center aboard the human vessel, Shadow Strike, hummed with activity as Commander O.C. Young monitored dozens of intercepted Veltharian transmissions. Her team of specialists worked around the clock, breaking alien encryption codes and mapping their communication networks with the methodical precision that had made human intelligence gathering legendary throughout soul space. Commander, we've cracked their primary military frequency, reported technical specialist Yoon Ji-hai, her fingers flying across holographic interfaces. Their commanders are using unencrypted channels because they never expected anyone to intercept their signals. Oh, So Young smiled coldly as she reviewed the intelligence data streaming across her screens. The Veltharians had made a critical mistake. They had designed their communication systems for a galaxy at peace, never considering that an enemy might use their own networks against them. Perfect. Begin Operation Nightmare Protocol. I want every destroyed Veltharian ship's final moments broadcast across their entire network. Let their people see exactly what happens when they challenge humanity. The psychological warfare campaign began within hours. Veltharian civilians across 7 star systems suddenly found their entertainment networks interrupted by horrifying footage, their beautiful warships exploding under human assault, their crews screaming in languages their translators couldn't process, the elegant formations they took such pride in dissolving into chaos and death. On the Veltharian homeworld, citizens who had never witnessed violence more serious than a diplomatic disagreement watched their mighty fleets being systematically destroyed by creatures they had dismissed as primitives. The footage was raw, unfiltered, and deliberately traumatic. Young Veltharian Kexmora covered her eyes as another of their cruisers exploded on the public broadcast, its crew's final transmissions echoing through her family's dwelling. Why are they showing us this? Why won't the Council make it stop? Her elder, Thexkala, watched with growing horror as human weapons tore through ships that had been considered invincible. They want us to be afraid, he whispered. These humans understand something we forgot long ago. That war is not just about destroying ships. It's about breaking the spirit of those who oppose you. Captain Han Min-soo took the psychological campaign to its next level from his stealth ship, Ghost Walker. His vessel, designed specifically for intelligence operations, had infiltrated deep into Veltharian space without being detected. The alien sensors, calibrated for their own beautiful but inefficient technology, couldn't track the angular human ship as it moved like a predator through their territory. Broadcasting false fleet movements on their tactical frequencies, reported Lieutenant Park Soo-jin from the communications station. Veltharian 3rd Reserve Fleet is responding to phantom human attacks in the Rigel system. Han watched with professional satisfaction as alien ships rushed to defend empty space, leaving their actual strategic positions vulnerable to real human attacks. The Veltharians' reliance on centralized command structures made them incredibly susceptible to disinformation campaigns. Now transmit the surrender recordings, Han ordered. Across Veltharian space, military commanders received what appeared to be authentic communications from their own fleets. Messages of surrender, pleas for mercy, and detailed descriptions of human tactical superiority. The recordings were actually composite creations, assembled from captured transmissions and voiced by human linguists who had mastered Veltharian speech patterns. Commander Yeth Cole of the 5th Fleet received a desperate transmission that appeared to come from his colleague Zexhara of the 7th Fleet. Don't engage the humans directly. Their weapons penetrate our shields like they don't exist. Fall back to defensive positions and await reinforcements. The message was entirely fabricated, but Yethkol had no way to verify its authenticity. The human intelligence network had learned to mimic Veltharian communication protocols perfectly, creating doubt and confusion throughout their military hierarchy. But the true terror began when human boarding parties entered the war. Lieutenant Colonel Kim Da-un sealed her combat helmet as the assault shuttle Reaper's Edge approached the crippled Veltharian heavy cruiser Luminous Dream. The alien vessel had been disabled by railgun strikes, its elegant hull cracked open like an egg, atmosphere venting into space through multiple breaches. "Remember your training," she told her squad of human Marines through the comm system. "These aliens have never faced close combat. They don't understand what we're capable of when we get inside their ships." The shuttle's cutting laser burned through the Veltharian hull with brutal efficiency. Human engineering had designed their boarding equipment for one purpose: getting their soldiers inside enemy vessels as quickly and violently as possible. Da-un led her team through the breach, moving with the fluid grace of someone who had trained in zero-gravity combat since childhood. Her powered armor, painted matte black to absorb sensor scans, carried enough weapons to outfit an entire Veltharian security team. The first alien defenders they encountered had clearly never faced armed boarders before. Their energy weapons were designed for ship-to-ship combat, too powerful and unwieldy for use in cramped corridors. Worse, they had no concept of how to fight in the three-dimensional environment of a damaged spacecraft. Da-un's Marines moved like deadly ghosts through the alien ship's twisted passages. When their advanced weapons ran out of ammunition, they switched to backup systems that horrified the Veltharian survivors: knives, axes, and other blade weapons that seemed primitive but proved devastatingly effective in close quarters. The aliens watched in terror as human soldiers fought with a ferocity that their peaceful species couldn't comprehend. These weren't civilized beings following rules of engagement. They were predators who had spent millennia learning to kill efficiently in any environment. "They're not fighting like soldiers," gasped Veltharian engineer Kexthul as he watched. Human Marines carved through his ship's defenders. "They're fighting like wild animals." What the aliens didn't understand was that humanity had learned warfare through thousands of years of conflict against their own species. Every technique, every tactic, every psychological trick had been tested in the crucible of human against human combat. The boarding of the Luminous Dream was recorded by the ship's internal sensors and automatically transmitted to Veltharian Naval Command before the vessel's destruction. The footage showed human soldiers moving through zero gravity as if they had been born in space, using the ship's own architecture as weapons, and displaying a level of tactical creativity that seemed impossible. One human Marine used a damaged power conduit to electrocute 3 Veltharian defenders. Another sealed himself into an airlock with 2 aliens and vented the atmosphere, relying on his suit's life support while his enemies suffocated. A third used magnetic boots to walk on the ceiling, attacking from angles the aliens had never considered possible. The psychological impact of these recordings spread through Veltharian space like a plague. Their people had never imagined that warfare could be so personal, so brutal, so utterly without mercy or honor. In the luxurious chambers of the Veltharian High Council, emergency sessions were called as reports flooded in from across their empire. Their military commanders spoke in whispered, terrified voices about human tactics that violated every assumption about civilized conflict. "They don't just want to defeat us," reported Admiral Thexmoran, his bioluminescent patches flickering with barely controlled panic. "They want to break us completely. Every battle, every boarding action, every communication, it's all designed to make us afraid to fight them." High Counselor Yexathara studied the intelligence reports with growing dread. "How do we fight an enemy that uses our own communication networks against us? How do we defend against soldiers who treat our most advanced warships like playgrounds for their violence?" The answer, as the Veltharian Empire was slowly learning, was that they couldn't. Humanity had spent its entire history perfecting the art of psychological warfare against opponents who shared their own capacity for violence and creativity. Against a species that had known only peace for 4 centuries, human psychological tactics were devastatingly effective. The beautiful, elegant Veltharian Empire was discovering that they were facing an entire species that understood war not as a necessary evil, but as an art form they had refined through millennia of practice, and Earth's children were just getting started. The great crystal chamber of the Veltharian High Council had never hosted such a gathering. Representatives from 17 different species filled the gleaming amphitheater, their various forms creating a rainbow of alien diversity. Yet all eyes focused on the small delegation of humans seated at the central negotiation table, their simple military uniforms a stark contrast to the flowing robes and ceremonial garments surrounding them. Admiral Lee Min-ho sat perfectly still, his weathered face showing no emotion as he reviewed the surrender documents displayed on his portable terminal. 8 months of warfare had reduced the once mighty Veltharian Empire to a shadow of its former glory. Their beautiful fleets lay scattered across space as expanding debris fields. Their proud military tradition had crumbled under the relentless assault of human tactical doctrine. High Counselor Yex Thara's bioluminescent patches flickered with barely controlled despair as she spoke to the assembly. The human defense force has demonstrated capabilities that exceed our understanding of modern warfare. In 8 standard months they have neutralized 87% of our naval capacity. A ripple of shock moved through the gathered alien representatives. The Kethmoran ambassador, a crystalline being whose people communicated through harmonic vibrations, produced a sound like breaking glass. The Zorthai delegation, tall insectoid creatures with compound eyes, clicked their mandibles in what could only be described as terror. "Impossible," whispered Ambassador Vexkala of the Meridian Collective. The Veltharian Empire commanded the most advanced military force in known space. How could primitives from an isolated system achieve such devastation? Lee finally looked up from his documents, his dark eyes scanning the assembled representatives with the calm assessment of a predator evaluating potential threats. When he spoke, his voice carried the quiet authority of someone who had just proven that human military doctrine was superior to anything the galaxy had produced. "We never wanted this war," he began, his words translated by advanced linguistic systems into dozens of alien languages. "Your people fired first. They destroyed a moon to demonstrate their power. They demanded our surrender without provocation. We simply responded according to our nature." The human admiral stood slowly, his movements economical and precise. Behind him, holographic displays activated, showing tactical analyses of every major engagement in the war. The assembled aliens watched in fascinated horror as human battle doctrine was laid bare before them. "Every human child learns strategic thinking through games and competitions," Lee continued. "We study historical conflicts from our own past. Thousands of years of warfare that taught us how to fight, how to win, and how to survive. Your species had the luxury of peace. We had the necessity of strength." Captain Choi Yu-jin, seated at Lee's right hand, activated another display showing comparative military doctrines. The Veltharian approach had been elegant, ceremonial, designed for show rather than effectiveness. Human tactics were brutal, efficient, and utterly focused on victory regardless of cost. "Your weapons were beautiful," Choi observed, her scarred face reflecting years of combat experience. "Our weapons were practical. Your formations were artistic. Our strategies were lethal. You fought to demonstrate superiority. We fought to eliminate threats." High Counselor Yexathera struggled to maintain her composure as the humans systematically dismantled every assumption the galaxy had held about military power. What are your terms for peace? What tribute do you demand? Which systems will you claim as conquest?" Lee exchanged glances with his fellow officers, and something that might have been amusement flickered across his features. "We don't want your territory, Counselor. We don't need your resources. Earth has everything we require." The silence that followed was deafening. Every alien representative had expected the typical demands of a conquering force: territorial concessions, resource extraction rights, tribute payments, subjugation treaties. Instead, the humans seemed to want something far more unsettling. "We want military cooperation agreements," Lee announced, his words sending shockwaves through the assembled delegates. "Defense pacts with every major species in this sector, joint training exercises, technology-sharing protocols focused on defensive capabilities. Ambassador Kexathul of the Rigel Federation raised one of his forearms in confusion. "You wish to teach us your warfare methods. Why would you share such advantages?" Commander Osa Young, who had orchestrated the psychological warfare campaign that had broken Veltharian morale, answered with chilling logic. "Because the next threat might not come from within this galaxy. Because peaceful species make attractive targets for aggressive ones. Because the only thing more dangerous than a galaxy that knows how to fight is a galaxy that doesn't." The implications sank in slowly. The humans weren't offering to become overlords. They were proposing to become teachers. They wanted to transform the galaxy's approach to defense, ensuring that no future conflict would find civilized species as unprepared as the Veltharians had been. "Your military academies teach ceremony and tradition," noted Captain Han Min-su, who had infiltrated deep into alien space during the war. "Ours teach survival and victory. Your officers learn to command in peacetime. Ours learn to kill efficiently and protect what matters." The Tekmoran representative, a gas-filled environmental suit containing a collective intelligence, spoke through its translation device with obvious distress. "You propose to militarize our entire sector of space, to transform peaceful civilizations into warrior cultures like your own." Lee shook his head slowly. "We propose to prepare you for reality. Peace isn't the natural state of the universe. It's something that must be defended. For 4 centuries, you've enjoyed peace because you were fortunate enough not to encounter a species like ourselves. That luck has run out." High Counselor Yex Thara reviewed the proposed defense agreements on her personal display, her patches flickering with patterns that indicated deep thought. The terms were surprisingly generous. Humans would establish training facilities throughout Allied space, share defensive technologies, and provide rapid response capabilities in exchange for mutual defense commitments. "You offer protection," she said slowly. "But at what cost? Will our children grow up learning warfare instead of art? Will our cultures become militaristic like yours?" "Your children will grow up alive," replied Lieutenant Colonel Kim Da-un, whose boarding parties had terrorized Veltharian crews throughout the war. "Your cultures will survive because you'll be strong enough to defend them. The choice is simple: adapt or become victims when the next predator species emerges." The debate continued for hours, as alien representatives grappled with concepts their peaceful societies had never needed to consider. The humans waited patiently, occasionally providing tactical demonstrations or historical examples, but never pressuring their potential allies. Finally, the Veltharian High Council cast the first vote. Yex Thara stood with visible effort, her people's defeat weighing heavily on her elegant frame. "The Veltharian Empire accepts the proposed military cooperation agreement," she announced. "We have learned that ignorance of warfare is not innocence, it is vulnerability." One by one, the other species followed. Some voted out of fear, others out of practical necessity, but all recognized the fundamental truth the humans had revealed. In a universe containing species capable of violence, pacifism was a luxury only the strong could afford. 6 months later, human military advisors were stationed throughout the sector, establishing training facilities and defensive networks. The galaxy's first joint military exercises revealed just how unprepared most species had been for real conflict, but also demonstrated their potential once properly trained. Admiral Lee stood on the observation deck of the orbital station above, New Geneva, watching mixed fleets of human and alien vessels conducting formation exercises in the void. The sight would have been impossible to imagine a year earlier, dozens of species learning to fight together, their various technologies integrated into defensive networks that spanned multiple star systems. "Do you ever regret it?" asked Captain Choi, joining him at the viewport. "Ending their age of innocence?" Lee considered the question as he watched an elegant Veltharian cruiser successfully coordinate with a human destroyer to eliminate simulated threats. "Innocence that can't defend itself isn't really innocence," he replied. "It's just ignorance waiting to be exploited." The galaxy had learned to fear humanity's capacity for warfare, but they had also learned to respect the humans' commitment to protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. The nightmare from Earth had become something even more unsettling. A guardian species that understood violence so well, they could teach others to avoid it. Peace still existed among the stars, but it was no longer the naive peace of the unprepared. It was the hard-earned peace of those who understood the cost of weakness and chose strength instead. And in the depths of space, human patrol fleets continued their silent watch, ready to remind the galaxy that some nightmares existed to protect against even worse dreams. The end.